Bricky here, today's adventure exploring the new Fantasy Springs, which is a themed port that is coming to Tokyo Disney Sea. I'm not an expert on this park, I've never been to this park, I hope to go very soon, but what I'm breaking down for you today is the concept art and some of the rock modeling for the new Frozen area. As a lifelong professional illustrator, a former illustrator for the Wonderground Gallery here in Disneyland, and as a Disneyland obsessive art junkie, I feel like I'm qualified to break down the concept art and models. Everything at the Disneyland Resort and all the Disney parks around the world begins with concept art, a sketch that gets refined into concept art that then models, architectural blueprints are built, and eventually we get to land. But there is something that Disney does both with their art, their modeling, and their park, which all revolves around composition. I call it the 3 levels of storytelling. When I first went into Disneyland, I realized they're bringing composition rules from art into the real world, and that's when I began to fall in love. Let me explain. Whenever you look at Disney concept art, and often you'll find this in the parks as well, there's always something that you're trying to look around, something that's huge and in the foreground. You ever try to take a photo at Disneyland and wonder, why is this tree in the way? Surely this was a mistake. No, these are called look-around points. At least by me, because they force you to look around them, therefore to go deeper in the park, go deeper in the artwork. These look-around points force you to discover what the real subject matter is. So in this concept art, I have the look-around point, the blown-out foreground, in this green color. The green makes us look around it to actually discover layer 2, which is the subject matter. Here, we're looking at a landscape illustration of Arendelle, Tangled, and Peter Pan. That foreground was there to make us look over it to discover this subject matter. It is a trick that makes your eye look at something 2 seconds too long to go, what am I looking at? Not this. Oh, I'm looking over here at the subject matter, which in this case is Arendelle. That little gimmick makes you spend more time with the artwork, making you feel like you just had an experience with the piece, feeling more attached to it. And then the final layer is always the skyline, or what I refer to as the infinity layer. So you have the go around, look around point, you have your subject matter, and then you have a final layer that just makes you feel like this world that you're looking at goes on forever. And friends, easy to do on a canvas, easy to do in an illustration, maybe not as easy as they make it look, but they also do this inside of the parks. So you look around an item, you get to see the item that you're going to, but there is an infinity background that makes you feel like this world you're in goes on forever, and most importantly, that you have escaped the world that you came from. So hopefully now when you look at this art piece, you understand the storytelling, the 3 levels of storytelling that's hidden inside of it, so that it's easy for you to see these 3 different focal points, but they don't just feel like a flat idea on a piece of paper. They feel like they're submerged into a world that you want to visit. Moving over to our next piece of concept art, we see a rock wall. Disney is perfect at using these rock formations to create walls, to create perfect sightlines. Let's break down this concept art. Here in our green level, our look around moment, we have the families, the rails, some of the rock work. Then we have our subject matter, which is the actual rock wall. And then there's actually a skyline that goes on beyond that, creating the infinity so that this rock wall feels like there's a world behind it. Now with a trained Disney eye, if you look in this rock wall, you can see there's some detailing put in there by the Imagineers. After all, this is in a Fantasy Springs, so we should be able to find fantasy mixed with the real world because, you know, imagination plus escapism equals Disney magic. And if you're a big Disney YouTube watcher, you hear forced perspective all the time. But a lot of times people ask me, what does that mean? Here I'm showing you how this rock work has more detail and it's larger. We then go up a second tier where the details have gotten a little bit smaller, making that level feel like it's taller, further away from us. Your eyes are trained to look at textures and details and determine how far something is away from you. If it's bigger and more clear, it feels like it's very close. If it's smaller and tinier and blurring together, you feel like it's further away. So now look at each one of these lines, and below the line, you will see that the detailing shifts its scale as it goes up the next step. I refer to this as stair-stepping our way to the top, where each step takes a step of transitioning details to a different scale that our brain recognizes as taller and further away. Once you train your mind to these details, you can then see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 different levels of detailing, creating different scales, fooling our minds into thinking this rock wall is much taller and larger than it actually is. Hopefully now you can see it without the edits. Now let's move over to one of the models shown over on the Disney Parks YouTube channel. This particular view should be of interest to fellow citizens of Disneyland. Let me explain. We are looking at 2 different tunnels that seem to be transferring gas underneath a road, possibly a railway. Not exactly sure, not an expert of this park, but I do know that this could be something similar to what might need to be done to extend Disneyland or Disney's California Adventure with the announced Disney Forward. If the study is approved, we could see the parks extend on the other side of Disneyland Way, so we might be looking at something similar to our future. In the idea of people flow, not necessarily IP. One of the many things I love about Disney park design is they give you multiple ways to go to the exact same place. See the little shadow character that has 2 different ways to go, left or right? I love that split decision because it makes everything feel more adventurous if there's more than one way to get there. And often that path will taper. Now, I know there is a little bit of bending going on with the photograph of this model, but you can definitely tell that the pathway, the trailway, is tapering into the tunnels, creating a keyhole that you will look through to see that adventure on the other side of the road that we are going underneath. On the other side of this photo, the right side, you can see that they have the modeling characters, which are to scale, and there are more modeling characters at the birth of the walkway than there are at the passage to the tunnel. Therefore, everything tapering down makes that tunnel, makes that image feel more cinematic, as if there is an age of discovery once you get through to the other side. And speaking of discovery, if we look around this rock ravine that's giving us these 2 tunnels of passage, we can see that there is some designing, some sculptures, some hidden stories carved into this rock wall, which will be fun to see as an adult, but imagine being a child and discovering Peter Pan carved into the rockway that you're walking underneath. And then we have kinetic energy of water. Water is fluid, it moves, it makes noise, it relaxes us. Over on the far left, we can see a noticeable waterfall that has a small pond below it. In the center, we will see water trying to rush its way down these man-made rapids of rock. And then on the far right, we will see a gentler sort of waterfall that will take its time to a stream that will run near us. This will create energy, this will create sound, this will also relax you. Now as the camera lifts up more to a bird's eye view, we get the part that I was talking about that pertains to citizens of Disneyland. You can see clearly there is a partition here in the middle, which if you look on the left-hand side, that's kind of the concept of busting out the backside of Disney's California Adventure, where you can see Pixar Pier would go underneath or over a road to create a new environment. Now, I'm in no way saying this is what we're getting here in California, but this type of idea would be something they would probably use to expand the parks over or under the road. Disney Parks on YouTube showed us another view of this model, of this Rockwork. Here in the green, we see our focal point, which this time is a look around to get to where we want to go, which this time is Arendelle. Here, these blue lines indicate how many different times this space that we're in shifts its planes with all these different grades to not make it feel flat, but to make it feel adventurous, because all around you there is different hills, different embankments, different grades, making once again adventure feel around you because your brain is stimulated as by what it perceives as lots of different options. Here I've indicated how many different levels of height and scale are on the rock ravine. And keep in mind, this is our foreground, so it's simplistic compared to our background, which has so many more levels of scale. It's so much more complex, and they're tighter together, making what's in front of us feel big and large, and everything else behind us. That rapid line stacking, that makes our minds feel like, whoa, this goes on forever. This goes on for infinity. And if you're wondering about all these little parklets, all these little mounds of grass, why so many of them? Well, let's remove the central one. Now it's just a big plaza where people will gather. But when the land is put there, it gives people the option of a path to keep going, so many options that our brain perceives as so many different ways to adventure. Disney uses the layering of storytelling in so many different ways. In this particular camera shot, the camera is placed in a way so that the look-around point of the rock wall feels grandiose as we're looking over these mounds of grass. purposely done to make this feel large. As the camera moves up to it and that goes away, now we get a whole different scale. And at this scale, we can observe that there is once again storytelling carved into the rockwork, the kinetic energy of water with a stream flowing over to the left, a sort of slower rapids there in the center, another stream after that, and then a direct waterfall in the center of the shot, creating kinetic energy, creating movement, creating sound, creating energy. But because no one really goes to a Disney park, maybe other than me, to see a pile of fake rocks, what this is really doing is that green edge. This is a look around piece. This is a layer 1 so that we can see the promise of Arendelle, we can see the castle over to our right, and we know that is the journey that we are on. We also have 2 different ways to go. That makes our mind say, oh, I want to go this way. Once again, laying the footprint for adventure. Working with scale over on the left, I've showed you how the rock in front of us has very, very intense details. Then that second level, that second ravine, that rock work is a little bit broader, more vertical, bigger cuts. And then when we see the final background piece, that would have very broad cuts, suggesting the scale of it. In all reality, that building is not that small, but it perceived to be so far away that it feels to us massive. And then this nice little subtle storytelling over to the left, we see a little bit of a rooftop, giving our mind the suggestion that this is a nice size rockwork, and there's a little village that exists on the left, and that will be our reward if that's the way we decide to go at this fork in the road. I hope you enjoyed looking at this rockwork structure. I'm going to be doing more videos in this series because they gave us so much in the videos over at Disney Parks on YouTube. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. That'll help me decide to keep making more of these videos where we break down the modeling and art of Disney Imagineering. Please follow along with the channel, give the video a comment or a thumbs up. And friends, until the next time I see you standing in front of some Disney rocks, I'll see you back here on the channel with more Disneyland news. Thank you so much for watching.